Perfect. Hello, everybody. We'll get started now and see people come in as they come along. Thank you so much for taking some time out this afternoon. I know it's a lovely day outside as well. So really, really appreciate you taking out some time, which probably is some of you people's lunch hour actually, to spend some time with Peter and I. So a big welcome. I'll do just some quick introductions before we get started. So my name is Jaya Aurora. I work for Aviva Investors, and I am actually one of the co-leads for the mental health and well-being work stream as part of the diversity project. So you may have seen my colleague Katie Halliday on some of these previous styles of things. I've come onto the work stream quite recently to help as co-lead, so you'll see both of us chairing these kind of meetings in the future. So it's really, really lovely to meet you guys, and I'll let Peter do a quick introduction as well.
Hi, Peter Slater, so welcome again. I sit on the mental health and wellbeing DP work stream. I have got, basically I left Northern Trust after 22 years. So before I left Northern Trust, I actually sat on the work stream as part of the work stream of Northern Trust. So pretty much I have 35 years in financial services. So I know the ropes. I know your businesses very well. And after leaving Northern Trust, I then went on and became a mental health first aid instructor. So I am now a qualified instructor, and I've come back to help out Jaya and Katie on the work stream. So we're looking at how we can help you, really. So that's a little bit about me.
Fab, thank you, Peter, and we're so grateful to have you. So as you guys know, today's session is going to be all about the challenge of mental health in the workplace specifically. So I'm going to just kick us off really quickly with a sort of a quote taken straight from the World Health Organization, and it's just saying that workplaces that promote mental health and support people with mental disorders are more likely to reduce absenteeism, increase productivity, and benefit from economic gains and actually social gains as well. So it's really important, not just for us as individuals to look after our mental health and on a personal level, but seeing as we're talking about the workplace in this session and what the workplace can do for you, there are so many benefits to looking after your colleagues and employees, and namely the ones I've just mentioned there. So this is the reason we're sort of looking, and it's so important to have some sort of mental health provisions available to your colleagues in the workplace. And I'm just going to talk through sort of a little bit about what it takes to create a healthy workplace and things that I can speak from my personal experience, what Aviva has in place for Aviva and Aviva Investors and other subsidiaries employees. And then what I will be doing through the rest of the session is passing over to Peter to talk about one specific thing that you can implement quite quickly, and that is a mental health first aider. So without much ado, one of the main things that essentially any regulatory body, and it's recognised by the World Health Organization again, that you need to create a healthy workplace, is looking at your work-related risk factors. And that'll just be things like working hours, stressors, workload and capacity. More importantly, to promote mental health by developing essentially those positive aspects of work and the strengths of the employees. Essentially, above everything else, though, the main thing to look at is addressing mental health problems, regardless of the cause, whether it was caused by work or whether it was caused by, something in your personal life. So we will focus a little bit more about the addressing side of things, but these are some core calls to actions that you can take away and review, maybe for yourself, maybe for your workplace, are my employers looking into these kind of things? And some examples of addressing those mental health problems, like I said, I can only speak mainly from my experience at the moment, are things like the employee assistance programs. Many of your companies might already have these in place, but for those that don't, it's supposed to be professional, independent, and impartial information from an outside company, which can give you support through counselling or therapy, but a listening ear from someone who is impartial. And the way employee assistance programs usually work is you can self-refer, or your employer can refer for you. You can have that assistance if you have that relationship. So those are quite common in large workplaces especially, and if you're looking into it, definitely check to see if your workplace provides something like that. Another thing which is maybe not as common, but some larger companies do provide, are access to specialists via whether it's an in-house doctor or a digital GP, in which you can book an appointment and either find out a little bit more about what's going on, get a referral. And then there's some more specialist applications that some companies like to use, such as Headspace or Calm, both that you can prescribe to on a personal level as well. Just download it off your regular app store, but they're both mindfulness related apps. And then we're looking at including employees in conversation. So this is a really good example of that. You know, dedicated work streams like the mental health work stream. Us guys at Aviva Investors, we have an in-house work stream which feeds into the DP work stream, which then obviously feeds into the industry. So having employees put in those discussions, those questions, rather than it all coming from a centralized area, usually ends up being HR, and you can hear it straight from the masses. So that's a really, really good place to start. And then finally, and the core part of this conversation will be around mental health first aiders and how they can help us as something that can be quite a good quick win to implement. I would like to say that at the Diversity Project, we do suggest that it is a really good tool to help, but of course it all depends upon your capacity, what you already have in place. So for example, at Aviva Investors, we've got all of the above, but not yet the mental health first aiders. And I would like to highlight not yet. It is something we are looking into, but it is really, really dependent upon your capacity. It's not one size fits all, guys. So that's just a bit of a short intro and a whistle-stop tour into what is available and has been available. I wonder then, Peter, if I can hand over to you to talk a bit more in detail about the mental health first aid, and then guys, we'll hold on to Q&A at the end if that's okay. And thank you.
Of course, yeah, I'll be pleased to go through. But what I was really trying to do this afternoon is, one, be able to, and it is very high level, but it's, what I really want to try and do is to look at what the mental health first aid is, but also what it isn't. We've heard, we've had some discussions with people in the past as to, and there are some concerns around what mental health first aid is. So I thought I would first off try and dispel some of those concerns. So what does it not do? So we are not training individuals to become professionals. We are not training them to be able to diagnose mental illnesses or be counsellors or replace professional help. I will come on to that a little bit more in a minute. It's definitely not a standalone course. I think there have been some discussions and conversations I've had in the past as to, well, it's great that you're going to train individuals with mental health first aid over a 2-day course, but then what happens then? They're left alone? Is it standalone? I could actually say it's definitely not standalone. There's a raft of information that comes with the course, and that includes a manual. We also refer people to online learning hub. There's a line manager resource. There's online brochures as to how to be a mental health first aider. There is also a refresher course, and it's very much like the physical first aid, that there's that they ask for people to have a refresher course every 3 years. And mental health first aid actually do have that refresher course as well. So it's definitely not standalone, and we're not asking people just to go away back into their office and say, right, you're on your own now, get on with it. We can really help on that front. Also, lastly, it's not a 2-day lecture. a number of people have been on this course, and will understand that it is highly interactive. We go through case studies in breakout rooms. We go through videos of lived experiences. We have discussions, but it's very much delivered in a safe space. No one is asked to do something that they're not willing and not happy to do. Everything's got to be within the individual's comfort zone. So that's a little bit about what it is, and again, Q&A at the end if there's any concerns about that. I can definitely I can answer those. So what is it? So mental health first aid, they're the only provider of mental health first aid training, or the licensed provider, and it's accredited by the Royal Society for Public Health. So it is a course which is based on expertise, lived experiences, research. There's a lot of research, and there is quite a lot of stats that we do come up with as we go through the course. Just going to quickly go through each one of these headings just to give you a bit of flavour as to what we're trying to achieve. So first off, this information on managing your personal well-being and how to release stress. What we're trying to do here is really say to the individuals who are on the course, you need to understand yourself and help yourself before helping others. There's always the great analogy of when you're on an aeroplane, and right at the beginning you have the if there's a loss of cabin pressure, the mask will drop down. Please put yours on before you help anybody else. And that's the same kind of thing that we're trying to do within the mental health first aid. The education educates in identifying signs and symptoms of poor mental health. Again, we're not making anyone into counsellors, but we are trying to educate in signs and symptoms. Specifically, if we look at the workplace, where mental illnesses such as depression and anxiety, you do actually, because Jaya said right at the beginning, that absenteeism, we talk about presenteeism, we talk about a lot of issues that can happen, and to have the education around, well, what are those symptoms we should be looking for? We also talk about the more harder subjects around suicide as well. Within that, we look at to try and dispel some of the myths. One of the myths that I always had was if you talk to someone about suicide, you may well be encouraging them to go through with it. That's an absolute myth. So to be able to have the confidence to talk to someone about it straight on, that that there are too many myths that that we can actually dispel within the course. That gives confidence and approach to approach and support others. We work on a mnemonic. It's not, I don't think it's quite as good as the one that physical first aid used, which I remember as Dr. ABC. Our mnemonic is algae, which doesn't quite trip off the tongue quite as much as I think Dr. ABC, but hey, it does work. And I can assure you that by the end of the course, it is burned into the into everyone's psyche. Very quickly, what does that mean? The A is to how to approach and to assess and assist someone. The L is to listen non-judgmentally. We do go through quite a bit around listening in the course, and especially looking at something about empathy against sympathy. The G is give information and support. Again, we go back, this is not giving people advice. We're not asking you to become professionals. We're asking you to understand what information and support you can give people. The E is around encouraging professional help. And that encouraging professional help can be EAP, could be right the way through, as Jaya just said. And the last one is encouraging other support mechanisms. That's something like charities, that's family, those type of things. We talk about providing information on managing your own personal well-being. We talk about the stress container, around how do stresses create the vulnerability that might well lead to mental ill health, and some of the coping strategies that someone can actually use. As I say, providing information on where to signpost. It's really about signposting to get professional help. EAPs, it could be a medical health provider organisation has, it could be a GP, and it could be in a crisis be a 999 call. To help prevent the mental health issue from becoming more serious, very much we're looking at the early intervention in mental ill health is really key. So that trying to be able to talk to someone early on in the issue is really important. We talk a lot about recovery. We talk about recovery is very likely and very possible. It's really key to understand if that's actually the case. The raise awareness of mental health at the workplace. We talk about some things in the pandemic as well. What happens if someone's working from home? How do you spot signs of depression if someone's working from home? Stigma and discrimination and language all come together. So very much we're looking at considering that 70 to 75% of people with diagnosable mental illnesses receive no treatment at all. A lot of the issue there is stigma and discrimination. They don't want to come forward with it. So we talk about the language and how can we take that barrier out of people's psyche. So that's a very quick overview of the actual course. How we put this course together, it's done in 4 specific sessions. The 5th one is very much around pre-work. So that's pre-work which is done before the course because we've only got so much time available. So session, I'm not going to go through each one of what's in each one of the sessions. I think you can probably read that for yourself rather than me having to read that out. What I would say is that whilst you would see, if anyone seen the diary events that we run or which have come out, what we do is we run it over 2 days. So we run session 1 and 2 on day 1 and session 3 and 4 on day 2. We can split those sessions up if your organisation would prefer that way, and that will work better for the organisation. We could potentially run a 1 and 2 1 week and a 3 and 4 another week. We could run a 1 week, 2 the second week, 3 the third week, 4 the fourth week. So very flexible and adaptable how we can work with your organisation. So you know, when will these slides be available to everyone? I'm assuming they will be, and obviously the recordings there, so you can always go back and have a look at that going forward. What I would just like to do before we kind of wrap up on the mental health first aid is just show a very short case study which is from Siemens, which might just give you a little bit more of an insight into mental health first aid.
My name's Dan. I did the mental health first aid training course, which was a 2-day course. I was interested in doing it because I had some mental health issues of my own last year. I found that the support here at Siemens was actually really good.
When one of my previous colleagues had a bereavement, the course actually allowed us to handle it better. I didn't realise the amount of issues that there could be surrounding mental health at work. And since the course has taken place, I had 2 or 3 people come to speak to me about issues that they're having, then went on to say how I could help if there was ever a problem or an issue or anything.
Mental health first aid England came to us with a range of options. We decided to go for the 2-day full accredited mental health first aid course.
I recognised that my own understanding of mental health and appreciation of mental health was lacking, and I wanted to take the opportunity to learn more about mental health and how we can manage it better. Seeing the reaction from the staff and the people, they're now recognising that the company does care about their health and well-being, both in the workplace and in their home life.
There's definitely more discussion here about mental health issues. I think people are becoming more open. There's less of a stigma as well.
The proof is in the engagement we're having now with our employee assistance programme and with our rate of absenteeism starting to come down.
Thanks. Yeah, I just wanted to really just quickly show that because I think it's a good insight into how an organisation looks at mental health first aid and some of the benefits that come with it. So just briefly before we go into the Q&A, just a little bit around how we as a DP and myself can actually support you. So I'm qualified to do the 2-day mental health first aid adult course. I'm also qualified to do a 1-day champion course that really is, I know this sounds really simplistic, but is a consolidated version of the 2-day. So you get everything you do, but it's just all, there's perhaps not quite as many lived experiences and a little bit less discussion, but it's a very good course as well. Both of those could be run online or face-to-face. And also what me and Caroline, who we work together on delivering these courses, we are more than happy to discuss other options to possibly lunch and learns, which would be focused on mental health, but perhaps something that your organisation might specifically want in just a 60 or a 90-minute session. And the last thing is, if the organisation wants some help in how to embed mental health within the organisation, it's something which I was very heavily involved with when I was at Northern Trust, so I can actually help on that as well. So that is a very whistle stop tour of mental health first aid. So I do hope that has helped people, one, understand what it is, and two, understand what it is. So Jaya, I'll hand back to you.
Thank you. That was really good, Peter. Absolutely, really informative. And I think definitely for me, it answered a couple of the questions that I've been holding on to. I do have another one, but what I would like to ask quickly is, guys, if you could pop your questions into the chat box. It's just one of the buttons along the bottom, and then Peter and I can make every effort to answer them, and we really would love to hear from you. Even if it's a comment, it doesn't need to be a question. You can ask us a comment, and we can definitely discuss that too. But while those questions come in, Peter, I wanted to ask, similarly to how the physical first aid certificate actually expires, does the same happen for mental health first aid?
It does. It doesn't expire. It's probably not quite as formal. We recommend the refresher, but obviously it's not something what we would ask the organisation themselves is to make note of who has actually taken the course and when that 3 years is up. As I say, I definitely wouldn't leave individuals alone for 3 years and just say, right, get on with it. I think there's a lot that we can do as an organisation, as well as possibly we can come in and sort of talk about it or refresh. But yeah, it's not. You don't lose your licence. It is recommended.
Fab. Thank you.
So sorry, just on that also, part of that is because whereas algae and those type of things are not going to change, you might find over time that a certain definition or how something's treated or something new onto the market. So we spend a lot of time in looking at websites and mental health, sort of the World Health Organization, the NHS, there's a lot of information, so we can actually just refresh that as well.
Fab. No, thank you. And just also, while those questions do come in, can you tell us what algae stands for?
As I very quickly went through, and it varies much. A lot of it is to allow the individual to have the confidence to be able to start that conversation off. What we find is when we talk to individuals, and definitely when you talk to them at the beginning of the course, at the end of the course, one of the reasons why people come onto this course is they don't know how to start that conversation. So where you look at the algae, which is the approach, assess and assist, that very much is you might be dealing with an early intervention, or you might be dealing with a crisis. So if someone's in a suicide situation, you may well be dealing with a crisis, but how do you approach that individual and assess and assist them? That listen non-judgmentally. We talk about a frame of reference, so that's very much around how we're nurtured, nature, some of our biases, some of our conscious and unconscious biases, to make sure that when we're listening, we're actually listening non-judgmentally. And we're not going sympathy, we're going empathy. that giving support and information, as I say, not advice. The encourage professional help, as I say, in an organisation often has EAP. As you said, you might well have an on-site GP, but people will have GPs that they can go to, and that encourage other supports is very much be aware. The manual has so many different telephone numbers, websites, just to really help people say, well, if someone does have an eating disorder, or does have a mental illness, where can I perhaps direct them to? So it's just giving them as much information as possible. And as I say, at the end of the course, if you ask anyone at the end of the course, what are they going to take away? One of the things they say is it's pretty much burned into my memory for forever.
Fab, amazing. We have had one question come in from Caroline, and she's asking, do you also offer / know providers who offer 2 to 3 hour long sessions for senior managers who may not have time to do the full qualification or want to act as mental health first aiders, but want to better support, don't have the time to be able to act as mental health first aiders, but want to better support their team? So do you think something that's a bit more contracted down?
So as I say, mental health first aid, officially they have the 2-day course, the 1-day course, and they have what they call a mental health awareness, which is very much around just being more aware around the stigma, and some of the signs and symptoms. But that half-day course doesn't go into something like algae. So when I've actually when I was at Northern Trust, when we were looking at what we're going to do around this, I actually took the half-day course. It's very good, but I think that it's very much an awareness course rather than if you go for the 2-day down to the 1-day down to a 3-hour, it doesn't then consolidate. You almost couldn't get everything in within that time. But as I say, I'm always more than welcome to have a discussion with anyone if an organisation is looking for something like something consolidated, which we can potentially work with that organisation as to what they would like to deliver. It's something that I'm always happy to have a conversation about. Yeah, absolutely. And Caroline, there is that smaller version, it is a good first step, absolutely a way in. So just before we start to close, and thank you everyone for your attendance, the best way to get in touch is, and correct me if I'm wrong, other Caroline, is it your email address that people can reach out on for any question to filter further?
It is indeed, and I'll pop that in the chat for everybody.
Perfect, thank you. So guys, just conscious of time, I want to say thank you so much for attending. Peter, thanks for taking this time out. Pleasure. If you've got any specific for Peter or questions for myself or any other general questions, you can send them through to Caroline. She'll filter them through to us, and we can definitely talk about some more things mental health. Thank you so much for joining, guys, and appreciate it so much. Cheers all. Yeah, thank you. Take care of yourselves.